So Shalom Aleichem to all of you, and as Reb Gedalia Yedid Nafshi mentioned, it's such a privilege for me and such a kavod to be with this Yarchei Kallah since day one. So to me today, Yarchei Kallah means two different things. I've been with the Agudah Yarchei Kallah every Sunday since the outbreak of COVID, and that's a few years, 4 years. But it's different. It's different to see people and just to look at a screen. And I just came back from America a few hours ago. I was there, and Baruch Hashem, a lot of Arbotzes Torah in America in my visit. And I was surprised how many people approached me and told me, we are your Sunday Talmidim from the virtual Yarchei Kallah, which is a great schus to me, but it's different. Seeing hundreds of people is inspiring, especially in these times. So, Eretz Yisrael is still in the midst of a terrible war, as you all not only know, but feel. And thousands of Achenu Beis Yisrael have been coming to Eretz Yisrael in this period, in the past few months, and many of them come to see me. And what I tell them all is, are you aware that you are insane? And they all look at me somewhat puzzled, some offended. Why does the Rav think we are insane? And I say, because sane people stay away from a war zone, and Israel is at war. There's been a terrible war raging in the Ukraine for more than a year and a half. I'm not aware that tens of thousands of Ukrainians from the entire world are coming to visit Kiev and Lviv and Mariupol. Everybody stays away. Who would come to the Ukraine? So we are beautifully, magnificently insane. And that is because we're not only a people, we are a family. Kallah Yisrael is one big family. And when your brother is bleeding, when your brother is hurting, you want to be with him. You want to sit next to him and not only hear how he's doing from far away. And so thousands of people have been coming to visit Eretz Yisrael just to see, to feel, to try to be helpful. And every year, I think, before saying my shiur, I say how inspired I am to see you all. And I'm even more inspired to see you all in these difficult days in Eretz Yisrael, that you all made it and all came here. So you have come here to be helpful. I'm not aware that you have any plans to go up far north or far down south, but learning Torah in Eretz Yisrael is being helpful, because we believe in Divrei Chazal, and we believe that Israel wins wars not only by might, but as the Gemara says in Makis Daf Yud, so coming to Eretz Yisrael and learning Yom and Valayla, that is being helpful, not only to yourselves, but it's being helpful in this time of war. Talmud Torah is what gives us strength. So it is once again an inspiration for me in these difficult times in Eretz Yisrael to see you all, regardless of the fact that plane tickets cost 3 times as much as they did a year ago. And Baruch Hashem, it's a pleasure to see you all. And once again, it's a schus to be together with you. I think the decision to learn Hilchos Shomrim was somewhat a risky one. Yes, because we've done so many sugyas in the past, from Mitzvah Buba Veira, Mitzvah Sichas Kavona, and Tzitzis and Tefillin, and so many other different sugyas, which I think this is the first time we really have a real Choshe Mishpat sugya. Is that correct? Yeah, but Onei HaMapech Bechoror is also more different than Shomrim. So, and I was asked to give 2 shiurim, so today we're going to give a introductory shiur about Yesod Chiyuv Shomrim, and I hope what we will discuss today will be helpful along the way in many other sugyas that you will be learning in Hilchos Shomrim. And tomorrow I'll be back to talk more aloha lamaisa about Mesa Machmas Malacha. So arba Shomrim heim, Shomechinim, Shomesocha, Soicha, and Shoyal. Arba Shomrim, but they only have three different halachic categories. Shomechinim is chayev only on pshia, only when there is negligence is a shomechinim chayev. Shomesocha, because he is getting paid and he has a benefit out of the shmira, his level of achrayis goes up one notch and he is chayev b'gneva v'aveda. Shoyal, because it is his sole benefit and only he benefits and not the mashil, not the one that lends, but only he that borrows. Therefore, he is chayev afilu ba'oinesim. Shomesocha, machlokes, dinoikes. Soicha, machlokes, is dinoikes shomesocha or dinoikes shoyel. But what we will be discussing today in this brief shiur is Yesod Chiyuv HaShomrim. What is the fundamental chiyuv of all of the Shomrim? So let me give a very brief introductory remark. Kol chiyuvei tashlumin shebetorah fall into one of three categories. Three categories that cover the entire spectrum of kol chiyuvei tashlumin shebetorah. And those three categories could be briefly summarized. Ovel, Tamura, Hischayvis. When a person wrongs an other and causes him damage, loss, pain, he needs to pay for it. That is category number one. Kol oisa ovel. When you did wrong to another person and you caused them loss, damage, and that covers Gnevo Gezela, Hilchas Choyvel Umazik, Oines Umefata. All these are under the category of ovel. Number two is Tmuro. You receive, you need to give. People should not expect to receive and not pay and not give. And that covers Mekach Umemkar, Prias Choiv, Hilchas Halavoah, and Nehene. Nehene, when a person has benefit from the possessions or monies of another, he needs to pay even though he wasn't even aware that he is nana. If my animal walked into another field and it ate, I need to pay what my animal ate, even though I am not chayev mitzad nizkei mamoin. I bear no responsibility, but I derived benefit, and my benefit came at the loss of another. I need to pay. So these are under the category of tumura, which is loosely translated exchange. You received, you need to pay. Category number three is hischayvus. A person could take upon himself willingly any obligation, monetary obligations. If he took it upon himself, he needs to stand on what he took upon himself. Those are the three categories that cover kol chiyuvei hatashlumin sheyesh b'toras Hashem. Where does Shomrim belong? In which of the three categories do we put in Shomrim? Would it be an ovel that I caused another person? That might be relevant by shomechinim shechayev b'pshia. I caused damage, loss to another person by negligence, and therefore I wronged him and I need to pay. Maybe, perhaps, it will also explain Geneva v'Aveda shel shomer socher. Even though Geneva v'Aveda is not pshia, it is not negligence, but you're getting paid, so you are required to do some more and go out of your way, and it is a loss that it was within your power to prevent, and you did not prevent it. But b'shem oifen cannot explain shoyel and soicher that are chayev ba'oinsim. I had no power, and it wasn't within my yecholes to prevent this damage. It's an oines gomer, and nevertheless I'm chayev to pay. So would there be a fundamental difference between shoyel and soicher on one hand, shomechinim shomer socher on the other hand? Lech ha'oira, Dalet Shomrim, they differ in halacha l'maisa in the level of their chiyuv, but they should be the same essence and the same fundamental yesod. So therefore, it would be unreasonable to say that dinei Shomrim, chiyuv tashlim and the shomer belongs in the category of oisa ovel. How about tmura? Tmura would explain why a shoyel is chayev b'yoinsim. Kol hanua sheloi. You are using the chayfetz, the animal, the car, the house, whatever it is of another person, and this is what you are required to pay. But that would not explain shoy mechinim that has no benefit whatsoever, and he's doing it totally l'shem shemayim. Why is he chayev l'shalem? He received nothing. It would also be unreasonable to say that that is the yesod achiev of shoy mesochar, because shoy mesochar is getting paid, but he derives no benefit meguf hachayfetz that was lost b'gnei v'aveda. So what are we left with if it's not reasonable to say the chiyuv of shomerim is mitzad ovel and also not mitzad tmuro? Obviously, the chiyuv of shomerim is mitzad his chayvus. And a shomer, regardless what type of shomer he is, whether it's shomer chinam, shomer socher, or socher, or shoyel, this is what he took upon himself willingly, knowing he was mischayev klapei chaveiro. He took upon himself, he obligated himself to watch over the mafkid's possession, whatever it may be, and therefore he is chayev because he willingly took this obligation upon himself. Va'adayin yesh la'ayin. And this would be question number 2. After we conclude that the yesod chiyuv v'shomerim is not category number 1, not category number 2, it's not ovel, it's not tmura, it is his chayvus, is a shoyim chayev because he took upon himself the detailed chayovim lefi mishpat HaTorah, and we assume that a shoyim chinam is not willing to take upon himself more than pshia. Why should I go out of my way and spend my time and my resources and my efforts to watch over something if I'm not getting paid at all? And a shoyim socher willingly takes upon himself one higher level, which is Geneva Va'aveda, to use Lashon HaKodesh. And I tried to give Shurim in English reasonably well, but Lashon HaKodesh is the language of Torah. Is a shoyim chayev mipnei shekach his chayev, or mipnei shekach ra'ui she is chayev? Is the chiyuv of shoyim because we consider it as if each and every one of the 4 categories, this is what he had in mind, and this is what he is willing to take upon himself? Or is it the Torah that determines this is what you should be taking upon yourself, regardless of what he might have in mind? Shoy mechinam, medin Torah, chayev b'pshia, shoy mesocha gnei v'aveda, soicher, either gnei v'aveda or oinsim, shoyel chayev b'oinsim, mipnei shekach ra'ui, v'kach gazro Torah. This brings us to a toises in Ksubas Daf Nun Vav, explaining a sugya in Bava Metzia Daf Tzadik Daled. So, the sugya in Bava Metzia is on page 185, but I will not learn the Gemara. I stick to the formula I usually use, just explaining and assuming that either you have learned the sugya or you will learn it after today's shiur. But the Gemara explains the Mishnah. Masne shoy mechinam liyos potem mishavua, shoy liyos potem meleshalem, noise sochav asoicha liyos pture mishavua umeleshalem. Even though the Torah is machayim, and the Torah clearly defines what each and every one of the dalet shoymerim are chayiv, a shoymer could stipulate to reduce the level of his chiyuv. And a shoymer chinam could say, I will watch over your stuff, but I am not willing to take upon myself any responsibility. And a shoyel could say, I won't pay. And if both parties agree, then he is not chayev more than his personal stipulation. So a shoymer could be masna les chayev poches. And the Gemara asked, and why is this not a masna al masha kosev b'Torah? a person marrying a wife cannot stipulate al menashe ein lach olai she'er ksus va'oina because he's a masna mashakosa v'toira. Why is this not considered masna mashakosa v'toira? And the Gemara answers, me'ikora lo shibed nafshei. He didn't take upon himself more than he stated. I'm not willing to take upon myself more. That's the teretz of the Gemara. Tosfos asks in Ksubis Daf Nun Vav, why can't we use exactly those same words when a person marries a wife and says, Al menashe ein lach olai she'ksis va'oina, me'ikora lo shi'abed nafshei. So why can't we say the same words? He did not take upon himself she'er ksus va'oina. Let's have a look at page 186, and this time I will go over with you the Lashon of Tosfos because it's very interesting. So Tosfos asks the question, what is the difference between Al menashe ein lach olai she'ksis va'oina and a shoyl that says Al menashe ani potem el shalem? Shoy Mechinim says Al menashe ani potem min hashavua v'yesh loima. Shani Hasam, kiven de ribsu toire Shomrim harba, Shoy Mechinim shoyel noise socha v'chulei, Yochanan mikolechod liyos lefi tenoi. Because we find so many different types of Shomrim, therefore any Shomer could be number 5. If the Torah gives us 4, maybe they could be 5. And any Shomer could stipulate his own halachas and his own level of chiyuv, which is somewhat interesting. Why would it make a difference? Ribsu Torah Shomrim harba. What is the nafka mina? But the Torah clearly says what each and every shomer is chayiv. Inami, shana hosam the chayvus a Torah shomer sochar al shelokech sachar val shoyel afi shekolanu sheloi umishabdem atzman lekol hakosev b'parsha hilkach b'mokem she'ein mishabdem atzman pturim. Second teretz in Tosfos seems to say a shomer is only chayiv because he intends to be chayiv, and he takes it upon himself. A husband bears responsibility to his wife, she'ksis va'oina, not because it is his intention, not because he wants to, but the Torah imposes on him. This is what a good husband needs to do for his wife, she'ksis va'oina, whether you like it or not. But Shomrim, the Torah is machayev mipnei shemishabdim atzmam, and that's a big chiddush. How do we understand teretz number 1? Many times I teach my Talmidim, when we have some difficulty understanding Tosfos, the first source to look is Tosfos Harosh. Tosfos Harosh is always the closest to Tosfos that we have in our Shas. It's interesting. Page 187, we have the Tosfos Harosh. The last few lines that are emphasized. So Tosfos Harosh asks the same question. What is the difference between Shomer that says, I want to be potem shavua, I want to be potem teshlumin, and a husband that says, Al menashe ein lach olai she'ksis va'oina? Shomrim ribsu Torah Shomrim harba. Starting off exactly like Tosfos. Shoy Mechinim shoyel noise socha v'socher v'adovet tolui b'das atzmon ulefi ha'na'osen mishabdem atzmam ka'odam ha'koinem mekach masne ma sheyertze hilkach b'mokem she'em mishabdem atzmam turen v'tenuan kayam. Tosfos combines both terutzim of Tosfos and makes them into one. And this Tosfos in both in Ksibis and both in Bava Metzia Tzadik Daled. I think that is the way to understand Tosfos as well. So usually, Inami is in other teretz, but I think it is clear in Tosfos Harosh, Inami is an additional emphasis, but I would not say it's two separate mahalchim and two different terutzim. So Tosfos seems to say the fundamental difference between Shomrim and she'ksis va'oina is There are chiyuvim that the Torah imposes on people. There are chiyuvim, yes, the Torah verifies, certifies, but the shortish of the chiyuv is because the person takes it upon himself, and therefore he is not defined as a masna masha kosa b'Torah. So this could be explained in two nuances. Machne Ephraim, Hilchas Shala Simen Aleph. Ktsois HaChosh in two different sources, Reish Tzadik Aleph, and once again in Shin Mem. They seem to learn Tosfos Kipshutam, and even it is even more reasonable and seems to be the kavanah of Tosfos Arosh. Yes, a shomer is chayiv because that is what he has in mind. And therefore, if he clearly stipulates it is not what I have in mind and I don't want to be chayiv, then he is not chayiv. I think this is a bit taking it too far. So if we have a total Amaoritz that takes upon himself one of Chiyuv Shmira, and then he says, I had no idea what I'm getting into, would he be chayiv or not? Would Beis Din have the authority to judge, and Beis Din has the authority to judge the intentions of people in every monetary issue? In every sugya that comes before Beis Din, which is a machlokes, a disagreement between two parties, Beis Din has the authority to analyze, to judge, to use shikul hadas. What did the person have in mind? So if we say Shomrim are chayiv because that is what they had in mind, so how would Beis Din deal with the case of a hiוםהשחור, Gneva Vaveda, and the hiוםהשחור says, I would never have gotten into this if I would know I'm chayiv b'Gneva Vaveda. And the Beis Din is impressed, he's honest. Nikorim divrei emes. Would we say is potem Gneva Vaveda? That would be extremely unreasonable. After all, these are dinei shomrim. And the chiyuv of every shomer is specified, is clear, based on Psukei HaTorah. It's a Mishnah, and it would be totally independent of what he had in mind. And therefore, my pshat, my reasoning, my understanding of Tosfos is, Tosfos and the Rosh don't really mean that a shomer is chayiv because directly this is what he had in mind to be mischayiv. And shomer generally, he knows that he bears responsibility. Whenever you take upon yourself to watch over something, and the mafkid puts it into your possession and he relies on you, you have some level of chiyuv. So I do think pshat in the Rishonim is a shomer is chayiv because fundamentally this is an agreement between two parties, not like choyvel amazik and gana v'gazlin. Shmira is an agreement between two parties, and the shomer is aware that he takes responsibility. Responsibility means liability, and not only to watch over something, but to bear liability for damages, for loss. But exactly what the level of chiyuv is, that is a din Torah. But because b'yesoidon shel dvorim, a shomer understands, the more benefit you have, the more responsibility you are expected to take upon yourself. Therefore, dvorav kayomin, and it's not a masna masha kosa b'Torah. But the Rishonim don't mean to say that every shomer takes upon himself this certain level of liability that Chazal are koveya, kachinel ani izdati. And there's a nafkamina between what I say and what the Ktsois HaChosh says, because the Ktsois HaChosh says a gewaldige chiddush. Baba Metzia Daf Tzadik Daled, the Mishnah deals with shomrim that take upon himself less than the Torah is mechayiv them. Shoyal masna lias potam etashlum, lias potam eshavua. But the Gemara also says that a shomer could take upon himself more than the Torah is mechayevim. Shomer socher could be masnel es chayev ba'oinsim. Shomer chinim could be masnel liyos kishoyel. And the Gemara asks, b'mai? How? Machloikes the Gemara, machloikes Ameroim. Either konu miyodoi, he made a kinyan suda, and he was mischayev to pay more. Rabbi Yochanan says, b'yahi anoah, gomeru mishabed nafshei. B'yahi anoah, that he's a trustworthy person, and people give him things to watch over. Gomer v'mishabed nafshei. Toises daf nun ches omed aleph. Maybe we'll have it. Toises daf nun ches omed aleph in Bava Metzia. Don't say where it is. Maybe it's not. So Toises asks, nun ches omed aleph. Okay, so nun ches omed aleph. The Gemara says that a shomer could take upon himself to bear responsibility even for shtoras, avodim, v'karkois, she'enom b'dinei shomrim. B'konu miyadoi. He needs to take upon himself with a kinyan, because shtoras, avodim, v'karkois are not b'chlal b'dinei shomrim. And Tosis asks, but this is Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan is the one that says of Tzadik Dalet that you don't need a kinyan. Tosis answers what they answer. The Ktsois HaChoshen uses Tosis in Ksubis Daf Nun Vav to be miyashav the kash of Tosis and Bava Metzia Nun Ches. Shomerim are different. A shomer is chayiv because this is what he took upon himself, and therefore he could take upon himself more or less. But Tosfos asked this kasha, and Tosfos does not say in Bava Metzia Nun Ches what they say in Ksubis Nun Vav. And therefore, Lanias Daiti, no. A shomer could stipulate less, but not more. If he wants to take upon himself more, you need a kinyan. And even according to Rabbi Yochanan, you need a kinyan, but the kinyan is be'ahi anoah gomer v'mishabed nafshai. That is the kinyan. And that's why Tosis rightfully asks, L'choyre Rabbi Yochanan soisa divrei atzmoi. So according to the Ktsois, his avona is, a shomer eschayev, this is what he took upon himself, and therefore there would be no difference between more or less. In my avona, no. A shomer eschayev, that is a din Torah. But fundamentally, the Torah is mechayev a shomer because he is aware. He's aware that responsibility comes with liability. And a chiyuv shmira includes a chiyuv tashlumin if you do not, if loss was incurred. And therefore this vora only goes less. But if he wants to be mechayev more, mamash chiyuv Torah, you need a kinyan. So the two mahalchim are somewhat nuanced. The Ktsois HaChoshen and the Machne Ephraim, their understanding, their havana is there is a direct correlation between the chiyuv and the shomer's intention. And my havana would be there is no direct correlation. A shomer does not need to be aware exactly what is the level of chiyuv he is taking upon himself. But shomerim is about das b'nei yodam. Sha'eksis voina is not about das b'nei yodam. And that is the difference between the two halachas. So now I want to bring a few sugyas that might be mitletalya, how we understand hiyoumhashchor b'yesoidai, and this brings us back to yesoid hadvarim, to the three different categories. And I said, maybe Dalet Shomrim are Shnei Dinim, and it is not necessarily a correct assumption to assume they're all the same b'yesoid hadvarim. Maybe there are Shnei Dinim. Tzadik Tes Omid Beis Mesechet Bava Metzia, and this halacha is found 4 times in Dinei Shomrim. Tiknu Meshicha b'Shomrim. Keshem sheyesh Meshicha b'Mekach u'Memkar, and when a person purchases an object or an animal, he is koine b'Meshicha, Tiknu Meshicha b'Shomrim. A shomer also needs to do meshicha. Machloikes Rishonim, and a Siman Shin Zayin Siv Beis, the Shulchan Aruch brings both opinions. Rashi and the Rambam say, as long as the shomer doesn't do meshicha, and he doesn't bring the chayfetz into his rishus, einoi chayev ba'achrayis. That is Rashi and the Rambam. Tosfos and the Rosh say, no. A shomer is chayev b'achrayis from the moment the mafkid was mesalik shmirosoi. They met in Rishus Harabim. They met in a restaurant. They met somewhere. And the shomer took upon himself, leave your car, leave your mule, your horse, whatever it is, I'll watch over it. And the Balaporo walked away. From that moment, the shomer is chayiv. So why is Meshicha required? Kol zman shelo moshach yochal lachzor boi. Both parties could regret and retract as long as the shomer didn't do Meshicha. But chiyuv achrayis is that is the opinion of Tosfos and the Rosh. One could argue that the Yesod Machlokes is, what is the chiyuv of a shomer? If a shomer is chayiv because he wronged another person, then it's mistava mishoshen estalku habalim. It is, you took upon yourself to watch over the chayfetz. You saw the other person walked away. He relied on you. It's reasonable to assume that miyoisa is a man, you are chayiv. But if the chiyuv hashomerim is chayvis, ein es chayvis below kinyan. Dvorim ba'alma never bring in achrayis. Every eschayvus is based on a kinyan. When we sign a tnoim, when you do a shidduch, without a tnoim, there is no eschayvus. So maybe this machlokes would be dependent on the 2 drochim. But once again, by shoyel, it is not avel. Shoyel is chayav and no negligence at all. Tiknu b'shicha b'shomrim is that all the shomrim machlokes rishonim. Nemuki Yosef Bov Metzia Tzadik Tes says Mashiach is relevant only by Soicher and by Shoyel. Because Mashiach is a kinyan. Shoyel and Soicher have some level of kinyan schiris. The animal, the car, whatever it is mine for a limited period of time, but it's mine to use. I have a schus, and therefore kinyan would be relevant. However, shoy mechinam, what is he koina? What's the essence of his kinyan? Or shoy mesocher? I have no right to use this chayfetz. So the Nemuki Yosef says, Tikna b'shicha b'shomrim is only by soicher and shoyel. That's not the opinion of Rav Rishonim. And the din of Meshicha b'shomrim appears in Choshe Mishpot 4 times. Reish Tzaddik Aleph b'shoy mechinam, Shin Aleph by Shoy Mesocha, Shin Zayin by Soicha, Shin Mem by Shoyel. In all the 4 Shomrim, different Simonim and Shulchan Aruch, we find Meshicha. And therefore, this machlokes and the Shoinim is by all Daled Shomrim. So we cannot explain the machlokes, depends. Is it Ovel or is chayvis, because this machlokes is relevant by all Shomrim, and soicha v'shoyel there is no ovel, and therefore the explanation must be different. Tiknu Mashiach b'Shomrim. It is a takana. And many times I explain to my Talmidim, our tendency in yeshiva is, every machlokes we learn, every ibayed or ifshet that we learn, every chakira, our tendency is to say, it's mitla talia b'shorshe ha-sugya, in the fundamentals of the sugya. But when you grow older and wiser, and you learn poskim, and not only chakiras, you see that most sfeikis and pluktas are nuanced, and do not necessarily depend on the fundamentals of a sugya. And therefore, this machlokes, exactly why do we need Mashiach? Is Mashiach necessary to bring a schayvis? Or Mashiach is only necessary the party should not be able to retract? It's a machlokes in protim in details, and it does not depend on shorshe hasugya. Another big machlokes we find in poskim. Shoyel shechayev ba'onsim. And that brings us to the sugya in Ksubis Daf Lamed Daled, which I do think is somewhere in our Mara Mekoimis. Where is that? 192. And this is a sugya, Hoiso Pora Genuvaloi Vitavocha B'Shabbos. If a person stole an animal, Chayev Keifel. Tovach HaMocha Daled V'Hei. Tovach B'Shabbos, Chayev, Shekvan es Chayev B'Gnei V'Koidim Sheyover L'Dei Yisr Shabbos. Hoysa Pura She'ula Loi V'Tvocha B'Shabbos Poto, because the entire Chayev comes on Shabbos and Gitavi, and we're not Chayev Shnei Chiyuvim, Kamlai B'Derabim Enei. And then the Gemara brings a machlokes. Omer of Papa Mishas Mashiach is Chayev. Hochename Mishas Shala is Chayev Ba'oinsin. Rav Papa says, Shoyel Shechayev Ba'oinsin. What's the Shas HaChiyuv? Shas HaShala. But Rava says, Shas Hu Oines, and not Shas HaShala. When a shoyel is chayav b'yonsin, the animal is lost. How much does he need to pay? According to the Papa, the worth of the animal, the value of Shas Shala. According to Rava, Shas Oines. And that is a machlokes in Rishonim lahalacha. The Rambam Milchas Shala Perek Aleph Halacha Hey maintains Mishas Shala, the Shach Shim Mem Aleph Siv Kot Nevav, brings Toisves Ksubis Lamedalad La'alocha Mishas Oines. What's the shorish of this machlokes? If we say the Chiyuv is the Avel, then it would be B'Shas Oines. If the Chiyuv is based on his Chayvis, when was he Mischayev? B'Shas Shala. But once again, totally unreasonable, because Oines is never because of what he did or he didn't do. That is the nature of an oinus. There is no ovel, there is no negligence, and therefore, once again, this machlokes is nuanced. Does not depend on the fundamental understanding mahu chiyuv ha-shomrim. No, shomrim is all about a schayvis, especially a shoyel. A shoyel has no other interpretation, no other avona, only a schayvis. V'yafal pi kain. Is the chiyuv chal b'shoshe is chayiv, or the person is mischayiv on something that will occur at a later time, and the zman achiyuv is when the chayfas will be lost, and not shas shala. So what I mean to stress is, this is a fundamental chakira, Bedinei Shoyel, and as you will move forward, you will have various different sveikas. L'cha'ira should be dependent on the schekira, but you need to rethink and recheck. Lo behechreach. There's a din poyel yochal achzor b'chatzi hayoim. A worker, an employee, has the privilege to step out and retire whenever he wishes. And that is a benefit an employer does not have, but the employee does. And Chazal learned this halacha, schiras poyalim, not dinei shomrim, keli b'nei yisrael avodim, v'lo avodim la'avodim. Could a shomer decide in the midst of Yemei HaShmira, no longer? Does a shomer have the din of a poyel, of other poyalim? Reis Tzadik Gimel Sif Aleph, it is clear in Shulchan Aruch, no, he can't. But the Ktsois HaChosh in Reis Tzadik Gimel Sif Kotten Beis says a gewaldige chiddush. He could say, I no longer will be looking after your chayfetz. Because that is like any other poyel. I'm working for you. I spend my time looking after your chayfetz. I don't want to do it anymore, and he could step away. But he can't step away from chiyuv achrayus. He still will bear responsibility if the chayfetz would be lost. He's stepping away from chiyuv shmira. He is no longer chayiv lishmor. And the Sam Sofer says the same. And that would be such a huge chiddush. The chiddush is a person is not responsible for shmira, but he still is responsible to pay if the chayfetz is lost. And this is a chiddush on two different levels. The mafkid would say, I don't want money. This is not mekech or memkar. You promised to look after my car. You promised to look after my animal. If I would want money, I would sell my car. I would sell my cow, and I wouldn't look for a shomer. So this is a gewaldige chiddush, and it's somewhat einoi misyashev el aleiv. So lulei divreim, we would say, chiyuv shmira and chiyuv tashlumin are two sides of the same coin, and they go together, and you cannot separate one from the other. And the yesod chiyuv of all Shomrim is responsibility for shmira, and if you're not Shomrim, you need to pay. So once again, if we say chiyuv Shomrim is achrayus, theoretically, the ktsois might be right. I took upon myself achrayus for two different things, and maybe they're not the same. Achrayus ashmira I could walk away from because I'm a poel. Poel yochal achzaboy. Achrayus tashlumin is binding, and I can't walk away from that one. But if we say chiyuv Shomrim is sheposha b'shmirasoi, once you pater him from shmira, how could he be chayiv b'tashlumin? If he's pater from shmira, what would be the basis of chiyuv tashlumin if we say a shomer chinem is chayiv mepnei sheposha loy posha? I have the right to pater myself from shmira, so how would I be still chayiv l'shalem? So the ktsois and the Chassam Sofer make sense only if we say it all depends on the schayvis. And then we could argue, we could separate one schayvis from the other. But in my opinion, totally unreasonable. I say it is a schayvis, as I said in the first remark in today's shiur, but these two schayvis are one, and they cannot be separated. Chayev l'shalem, im lo yishamar, chayev lishmar, and therefore a shomer would have another din of any other poyel. And even though there is some similarity between a shomer and other poyalim, after all, I'm looking after your mamoin, but shomer and poyalim are two different chalokim and choshim mishpat. They're not the same. And a shomer does not have the din of a poyel. And he cannot step away neither from Achrayas Tashlumin nor from Achrayas Shmira. Which Gemara do you mean? At the beginning of Bava Kama. So this brings us to the last stage of today's Shiur. So in the Ovis Nezikin of Rav Chia, he also counts Dalet Shomrim. But the Ovis Nezikin of Rav Chia are fundamentally different than Arba Ovis Nezikin of the Mishnah. Arba Ovis Nezikim are Niskei Mamoin. According to one Pshat and Mava, it is also Niskei Odom. But the Tzad Shova of Arba Ovis Nezikin is Mazikim. Ovis Nezikin of Rav Chia are Ovis Tashlumin, not Ovis Nezikin. And therefore he counts many other Chiyuvim, and not only Arba Shomrim. However, the Ramban and the Rashba both say that a Pesheya is Chayev Mepnei Shehu Mazik. And now, what I want to point out is the fun. Where's the Rashba? What page? Yeah, I think it is 204. So on Bava Metzia Daf Tzadik Daled, we have the Rashba. Hiksha haravid, kivin shetnai b'shas meshicha lama li kinyan, v'kol tnaishu b'shas masa miskayim below kinyan. He deals with the Gemara we quoted before, that a shomer could take upon himself more than the Torah's mechayev, not only less, but more. And the Gemara asks, how? B'shekonu miyadoi. And I argued, even Rabbi Yochanan, that says you don't need a kinyan because be'ahiyah noah gomer v'mishabed is a kinyan. So Ravid says, if this is what he took upon himself, b'shas Kabbalah Sashmira, why do we need a kinyan? V'nereli she'en kan kushya, shelo matzinu she'eschai avodam elamach mishanena mechaveroi, kalvoa, oy shenasa loy shoy masina, oy soicha, שהנוע שלוי וכיוצא בזה, או שהסנה לאחר על פיו כקבלן ואורוב, בשעס מתן מויס, קניין חליפין. So the Rashba says, I don't understand the Ravid's kasha. Every hischayvis is based on Kabbalah's davar. Chalifin. What is chalifin? Moishech kli shel ploini. Tachatov, you gave me a pen, you gave me a kli, you gave me a chayfetz, and I am eschayev. Adarabba, yesh litmoy al shoy mechinem shechayev toira bepshia. Shoy mechinem, what is the basis of his eschayves? Kivan shekibel al atzmoy, v'zeh nishan al shmirosoi v'nevad bepshiosoi, Harei ze koroiv lemazik. Aber es chayev boinsin, b'mei es chayev. Therefore, we need a kinyan. And kinyan is based either on chilipin or b'yahiyah noah. As I said before, b'yahiyah noah, I derive benefit. I enhance my reputation. People trust me that I will watch over their mammon, their possessions, their money, and that is as if I received, and therefore I could be mischayev. So the Rashba says, shoy mechinam, koroiv lemazik. And he clearly says, that wouldn't work by oinsim. So according to the Rashba, there's a difference between shoy mechinam and shoyel. Shoy mechinam, koroiv lemazik. Is that the same as the Rambam? famous Rambam, Hilchos Chiras, Perek Beis Halacha Gimel. The Rambam is almost a das yochid that a Posheya is chayiv even by shtoros, avodim v'karkois. 207. Perek Beis Halacha Gimel, Yira'eli. Do you all know what these two words mean? When the Rambam writes Yira'eli, whenever the Rambam uses this formula Yira'eli, it is a halacha that has no source in Mishnah or Gemara, and the Rambam is mechadish halacha misvora. So whenever the Rambam is mechadish halacha with no source whatsoever, only medatoi harachava, this is the formula he uses. These are the two words, Yira'eli. Not very many halachas in Rambam that we find this formula. Let's learn the Rambam. Yira'eli, she'im posha hashoyme ba'avodem v'kiyoytze behem, chayev l'shalem. She'inei pota ba'avodem v'karkoas v'shtores elem edin gneva v'aveda, u'meiso, u'kiyoytze behem. She'moyo shoyim echinem al metalten le'venignevu o'avdo, yeshova anispoto. Ba'avodem v'karkoas v'shtores pota meshvua. וכן מו ישוי מסוכר שמשלם גנבה ועבדה. אבל הם פושע בו חייב לשלם, שכל הפשע מזיקו. Let me just note, the Rashba writes korov lemazik. The Rambam writes a peshea maziku. They are not the same. The Rashba is one of those that are choylek on the Rambam, and he disagrees with the Rambam. And the Ramban and the Rashba had the kvutz of Rishonim that say there is no chiyuv posheya b'shtoras avodim v'karkois because chiyuv posheya is medinei Shomrim. The Rashba says a posheya mazik, not the Rashba, the Rambam. And the Rashba and the Ramban say a posheya is only a groma bin ezikin. You can't be mechayev in medin mazik. So when the Rashba writes, Korov Lamazik, doesn't mean what the Rambam says. According to the Rashba, Shtoras, Avodim, V'Karkois are exempt even from Pshio. The Rambam says, Pshia has a din mazik. But what we do see in Rashba is, Chiyuv Shomrim is different, Chiyuv Shomrim Chinam B'Pshia is different than Chiyuv Shoyel Ba'oinsim. Shoyel Ba'oinsim is totally a schayvis. Shoy Mechinim B'Pshia is mazik. But the Rashba says it only on Pshia, not Gneva V'Aveda. And the Rambam, when he says Pshia mazik, only Pshia, not Gneva V'Aveda. But according to the Rashba, we must assume Shnei Dinim B'Shomrim. Shoyel V'Soicha Shechayovim Ba'oinsim is Chayvis. Shoy Mechinim Shechayev B'Pshia. Ovel, it is Korov Lamazik. You took upon yourself to watch. The other person relied on you. And if you were Pshia, Korov Lamazik. Shnei Dinim B'Shomrim. Ramban Bava Basra Kuf Sameches. Did we go that far in our Mara Mekoimis? I don't think so. But the Ramban and Bava Basra Kuf Sameches, and the last sugi in Bava Basra is Dinei Orev. 209. No, that's another Ramban. That's the Ramban that's cholik on the Rambam that I mentioned a few minutes ago. The Ramban says, even a Peshea Pota B'Shtoras Avodim V'Karkois.
198 is Ramban. 197, bottom of 197.
Nothing escapes Reb Shloime's iyun. Ve'i kasher bo Shomrim dechayev rachmon eichem eshkachas lan b'shloime shoyme chinem v'shoyme socha b'yodoi. And therefore it's not an asmachta. Aval hayech Shoy mechina masna lies keshoyel. Zoyne kusho. שכבר נספרש הדובר, שכל התוילה בדס החרם לאו אסמכתה. So the Ramban assumes that Chiyuv Einsim is totally based on his chayvus. And therefore, why wouldn't it be an asmachta? When a person is meschayv something, which is not within his power, it's an asmachta. The Ramban proves from Dinei Shomrim that Torah b'das acherem is not an asmachta. Maybe I need to explain what is asmachta. What's the concept of asmachta? When a person takes something upon himself, and he relies and hopes that this chiyuv will never come to be. I will see to prevent this chiyuv, then he's not chayiv. Because there's a lack of gmar das. So the Ramban asks, shoy mechinim, shoy mesocha, that are chayiv b'pshia gneva vayde, it is within his power. But a shoyel, it's not within his power. Why isn't it a smachta? And he proves Torah b'das chem is not a smachta. So what we see from the Ramban is that Shomrim is kol kuloi his chayvis and not ovel, and therefore the Ramban has the dilemma. What about a smachta? Why isn't all the Shomrim a smachta? And the Ramban explains, based on the halachas of a smachta, that Shomrim are not a smachta. Both shoy mechinim, shoy mesocha, and both shoyel. So, according to the Ramban and Rashba, Peshea korov lemazik, and definitely according to the Rambam, that Peshea mazik, there are shnei dinim b'shoymrim. Chiyuv shoy mechinim b'pshia, and maybe shoy mesocha b'gneva v'aved as well, are under the category of Ovel. Like in Eva V'Gezela, Choyvel Amazik, Oinesu Mafata. Chiyuv Oinsim is definitely based totally on his chayvis. And the fundamental assumption that Dalet Shomrim have a shared fundamental Yesoid, no, not necessarily. But in the other Rishonim, including Ramban that we just learned in Bava Basra Samaches, we would learn Kol Chiyuvei Shomrim are his chayvus, and therefore Tiknu Meshicha B'Shomrim. So today's shiur was not a Halacha L'Maisa at all, but we did touch upon various different machlokes that we find in the Rishonim, and what I saw as the to'eles and the tachlis of today's shiur is just a fundamental understanding chiyuv shomrim mahu. And we broadened the scope of this discussion to include the three fundamental yesoides that cover the entire spectrum of chiyuvei tashlumim shebetoira. So once again, it's a simcha to be here, it's a schus to be here, and I'm sure that the coming days will be gewaltige days of Simchas HaTorah and of Yagias HaTorah. And we'll see you Be'ezeh Hashem tomorrow when we will be discussing the halachas of Mesa Machmas Malacha. And these halachas are very common and very nogeya lamaisa. And Be'ezeh Hashem. So let me just share one final word. And my Talmidim know this Rabbeinu Yoina by heart. Rabbeinu Yoina, Perek Beis Mishnah Yud Ale de Mesechet Avos. Rabbeinu Yoina says, Kisha'ato misyageya b'Torah tishtashea ba. HaTorah hoiso shashuav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu nosan lanu Torah she'anu nishtashea ba. In every other endeavor, work and pleasure usually don't go together. People work 5 days a week and then they have a weekend to enjoy. They work 10, 11 months a year, and then they have vacation to enjoy. Rabbeinu Yonah says, Kishe'ato misyagea b'Torah tishtashea ba. To us, toil and pleasure come together. We enjoy our learning. And we toil in our simcha. Onu mishtasha'im b'yegia v'yegeim b'shashua. And Shashua Shel Torah is so important. And many times young Avreichim Bochum ask me, do I have a sgula for Zikaron? Are there sgulas to remember what we learn? And the Chofetz Chaim was once asked the same question. And the Chofetz Chaim responded by quoting a posuk in Tehillim, the beginning of Tehillim, Ki im b'toras Hashem cheftzoi, sosam velo piresh. If b'toras Hashem cheftzoi, you will remember what you learn. And I, Ania Cotton, also quote a posuk in Tehillim, but a different posuk, and that is Kuf Yutes Tet Zayin. B'chukoi secho ishtasho, lo eshkach dvorecho. And the Radak writes on that posuk, Kasher ani oisig b'divrei Torah, ani mishtashea behem, ulefichach lo eshkechem, kehemu li, lesosoin ulesimchas levav. So I tell my Talmidim, first gula for Zikaron is memorize the Radak. If you remember the Radak, then you will remember far more than the Radak. Kasher ani oisig b'divrei Torah ani mishtashea behem ulefichach lo eshkechem ki hemu li lesosoin ulesimchas levav. Every cognizant, well person remembers the names of his Einiklach. Some of us will remember the birthdays, at least of our children, because those that you love are close to your heart, and you will not forget them. So the more you enjoy your learning, the more you will remember. So I feel a mission to be mishtashea b'divrei Torah and to share Simchas HaTorah with my Talmidim, and I daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ko Yitan Hashem v'Ko Yosef, and we should all have this pleasure, not only the privilege, but the pleasure as well for many years to come, L'ishtashea b'divrei Torah, together with the wonderful Yarchei Kallah, the virtual one, and the live one, Ko Yitan Hashem v'Ko Yosef. And I once again want to say how important our Torah is in these painful, difficult times when every day soldiers are dying. And I tell people, I know what I'm saying now is a bit harsh, but in painful times, sometimes we need to say harsh words. If you are the same Isro Chag of Simchas Torah as you were in Chol HaMoed, you have a big problem. If you're not learning more and learning better, you're not davening more and davening better, it is either because you don't care or you don't believe. Because if you believe in the Koyach HaTorah and Koyach HaTfilah, how come you're not learning more, you're not davening more? Either you don't believe that Torah and Tfilah make a difference, or you don't care. Both are very bad. So if you care about what's happening in Eretz Yisrael, and you care about young lives and young almonas and young Yisraelim, and fathers burying their children, shaloi kedarkei shaloilam, children should be burying their parents la'achar mea ve'esrim. So how come you're not davening better? Or saying another few kapitlach and Tehillim? How come you're not learning more? So if you're not better than you were before, either you don't care or you don't believe. Because if we care and we believe, we should be doing more. How much more? Everybody has his own nisyonis, his own difficulties. But we all must be doing somewhat more if we believe in our Torah Kedosha, that tefillah makes a difference, that Torah makes a difference, and we care for our brethren, for our fellow Jews. So to me, every shiur I give, every moment I learn, every kapitel Tillim I say, I feel a tremendous achrayus of Klal Yisrael. Yeh ratzon shekodesh Baruch yirachem al amo, v'nasati sholom ba'oretz, u'shchaftem ve'ein machrid, and we should be able to learn Torah in Eretz Yisrael b'shalva, or b'simcha, or b'sholom, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be marachem al Klal Yisrael and send us Moshiach Tzidkenu b'mheru v'yomeinu, amen.